Who's excited to talk about AI and your body? I mean, a little bit of excitement, a little bit of concern, that's completely fair. So AI has been impacting all sorts of industries, including healthcare. And whether we're talking about drug discovery, whether we're talking about personalized medicine, whether we're talking about bioengineering in general, AI tools are leaving their mark. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, AI and health, human health. Let's start with our panelists. Why don't you introduce yourselves, tell us what your company does, and how you're using AI. Let's start with Molly and then Viswa.
Well, thank you everybody for coming here. Element Biosciences is a unicorn biotech company, and we sit in between data science and the biology, and that's why I'm here to talking about AI. Our ultimate goal is to digitize biology. What that means is that we're able to ultimately to predict and prevent diseases just by looking at your genetics makeup and also your environmental factors. And this sounds like science fiction, and because it is hard, right? Biology is super complex. And to your point earlier, do you know how many cells in your body? There are 37 trillion cells in your body, and every single cell is doing somewhat different things. So it's very difficult to understand how the biology works in your body. And there are more unknown factors or variables than the known rules. So what Element tried to do is to build not only the AI model, but also the experimental tools for us to collect enough data in your body, every single cell, to understand biology on the fundamental ground. And then we can hopefully build a more accurate AI model to decipher the biology in your body.
Hi, I'm Viswa, Colluru, founder and CEO of Enveda. We're doing to life's chemical code what Molly and Element are doing to life's biological code. Why is that important? Two really simple reasons. We know more about genes of random viruses than the chemistry of your blood. 99% of the planet's chemical code remains unknown to science. Two, chemistry is both the noun and the verb of what it means to be alive. Every one of your 37 trillion cells, every second, does 20 billion chemical reactions to turn your breakfast into you.
All right, so let's talk about AI. How is AI helping your company change human biology and physiology?
I guess I'll start. We are just starting to use AI recently, because initially when we started the company, we are a hardcore instrumental tools company. We make tools for DNA sequencing, we make tools to identify protein markers and all that, very, very biology-oriented. But now recently we realized that because our tools can actually give you highly scalable, low-cost, affordable data very quickly, we're becoming a data factory. So we can actually take these data and build AI foundation model to understand biology. So there are a couple of ways that our company is using AI. The first one is actually inside our protocol or product already. That is to use AI to do data analysis. Because our instrument coming out with all kinds of different images of the cells and how proteins and RNA and DNA molecules interact inside cells, we're able to use AI to decipher images a lot more accurately. So that's the first layer. And the second layer is that we can use AI to build foundation model. Essentially, it's a large language model based on the data we collected from the instrument and try to build a predictive model to understand biology. And obviously, AI is an algorithm. It's easy to write, but it's not easy to have a predictable, accurate model. So you will have to have experimental data. Otherwise, it's just going to be garbage in and garbage out. So this is why we're excited about using AI for our business, because we have the tools and also we have the model together.
Yeah, at Enveda, I think we think about things very complementarily. So all of you, how many of you have used ChatGPT? So have you ever thought about why or how ChatGPT can translate between two languages that should really have no training data? Right? So I can go on there and I can ask ChatGPT to write a poem about mass spectrometry, which is a very fancy word for an instrument that actually weighs molecules, right? And I can then ask it to translate it to Telugu, which is my mother tongue, and it will do so perfectly. Why? The reason is not because there are millions of books written in English about mass spectrometry that have also been translated to Telugu. It's because it's learned enough English, of which mass spectrometry is a subject, and enough Telugu, where even though mass spectrometry is not a subject, there are related concepts. So we use essentially the same sort of AI logic that exists in inherent grammar and language to teach computers the grammar of chemistry. So at Enveda, the easiest way to think about it is we can tell you what molecules are and what they might do by building a ChatGPT for chemistry. And like Molly mentioned, it's built on the world's largest data set of the weights of molecules and how they break apart when you hit them with radiation.
I feel like we should combine our data.
That's right. Combine biology and
Yeah.
chemistry, they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
I definitely want to get to the data part again. But pulling back a bit, when I first heard about the premise of this panel, my mind immediately went to 2018 when a Chinese researcher announced he had genetically modified human babies, which of course has ethical implications. So where should we draw the ethical line, especially as we use AI more? Where would you say we should think really hard about AI-enhanced biology and what is allowed and what isn't allowed?
Yeah, that really is a very, very good question. And, my mind is racing right now because I really think that any tools that has the potential to impact medical care or human society has its positive side and the negative side. So we really just have to really looking at the positive side, try to minimize the negative side, because one obvious example we can think about is the nuclear weapon, right? Because all these things that the nuclear power is so important for energy generation, but when it's used for negative purposes, it can cause a catastrophe. So it's the same thing for genetic engineering. It can be used for treating diseases and all that, but it can also be used for things that we don't want to do, really, as a human society. So this is really upon the entire society to police that, really. But for Element ourselves, our goal is to increase the affordability of a precision medicine so that we can predict and cure diseases. Other than that, we want it to be operating within the morale of the society. Yeah.
I think both Molly and I have the distinct privilege of waking up every morning and having a groundswell of passion, because what we do is directly in service of patients. And so from that vantage point, I think I'm going to come down on one side of this debate and say it's probably unethical for us to not use AI, given its massive potential for us to understand living systems and hopefully be able to manipulate them for our own benefit. To give you a sense of how much we don't know, if you've all understood and read your biochemistry, there's a group of molecules called bile acids. And these molecules are just made from cholesterol. And previously, they were thought to be passive actors in metabolism, and that there were a few dozen. At Enveda's labs and in the labs of our scientific co-founder, in the last 4 years alone, we've discovered that there are tens of thousands of these molecules, and that there are massive recurring patterns in different forms and stages of disease. In fact, today we think that these thousands of bile acids form an inter-organ communication highway. Mm-hmm. And you might imagine the repercussions of that could be huge in how we diagnose, treat, and mitigate disease. So without AI and without our ability to, say it simply, just match recognize and generate patterns, which is what AI is, I don't think we'd be able to do any of that. And I think it's irresponsible to keep medical science from moving forward because there's a chance of something potentially going wrong. I think initially when the bicycle was first invented, it was considered to be illegal and a product of the devil to ride it. In fact, the British even invented a disease called bicyclitis, which they said will affect you, and it's the expression of your face when you're riding hard between two towns. So I think there's a lot of fear, obviously, and the fear comes from uncertainty. But over time, I have deep faith in humanity that we'll figure out how to use it for the better, not for the worse.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think AI is just a tool, right? Because I think how to use it is upon us to decide.
Yeah, so speaking of that, I would say as AI becomes more and more prevalent in medicine, would you say we run the risk of changing what it means to be human? Or again, it's just another tool and that's a bunch of fear mongering. Don't worry about it. AI will impact medicine, but overall it will be a net positive.
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer because I think, at Element, we're using AI to improve the healthcare, improve hopefully, to make better medicines for each different conditions. How do we change the physiology of the humans? That really coming down to, okay, do we really want to use AI as a tool to guide genetic engineering of a person? Maybe it's possible sometime in the future because the tools can only be, can be used for that because we can already genetically modify an animal, right? And genetically modify a plant to improve their nutrition content or have you. But when it comes down to the humans, I do think, how to use AI is really upon us. How do we decide what is ethical, what is not ethical to do? At Element, we really wanted to be operating within the realm of improving the entire human healthcare instead of creating something very different. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what it means to be human has never remained constant. If you imagine the life in the 1700s, or 4,000 years ago when we first tamed the horse on the Asian and Eurasian steppe, I think at every given time we're on a continuum. I think what's exciting is, just like when the first horse was tamed and humans could now roam hundreds of miles a day and therefore have larger hordes and create the first beginnings of society and language that today still remain in 445 languages, we're at a point where maybe that continuum is potentially at the precipice of a leap. And that's maybe something that's scary, but I would contend that, just as internet and attention algorithms have changed us, I'm sure AI and access to question and answers, as well as new ways of understanding what's in us, on us, and around us will change. But the responsibility, I think, remains not to resist that change, but to think about what it means to be a good human, what personal well-being entails, and what overall societal prosperity looks like, and creating systems of government, policy, and or your own values in light of that new technology. But certainly not one where you think, oh, AI might change you, and therefore is something that we must try to hold off.
Speaking of government policies and laws that we might want to pass and regulations and all that, how are you thinking about AI's impact on healthcare with regards to equity? How can we ensure that across socioeconomic groups, AI's impact on healthcare will be equitable and not just something that's reserved for, frankly, the rich?
Yeah, I'm super passionate about that. I don't know how many of you knows about Element's business. The fundamental reason we create Element Biosciences is to democratizing DNA sequencing at the beginning, so that the access of genetics information for everybody can be done regardless how well you're funded. And as a matter of fact, since we started to commercialize our products, we gained 55% of our revenue come from outside the US. And we're in many, many emerging markets because, now with our tools, we can take these DNA sequencing to areas that genetic information was not accessible before. So with the same kind of philosophy, we wanted to incorporate AI into our offering, so then we can actually make it, faster, better, and cheaper, if you will, so that we can democratize the access of AI combined with a tool to everybody around the world. And I'm very passionate about that.
I agree, and I think that any sufficiently scaled technology has almost always had a democratizing output, right? Electricity, the internet, and I think AI will certainly fall in that same bucket. I don't know if you've been to San Francisco recently, but if you have, you can take a fully self-driven taxi ride by Waymo. And Waymo has this advertisement, ride with the most experienced driver in San Francisco, because something like 15 million combined driving hours have been used to train the Waymo cars. And I think that the fact that you can now get an experienced 15 million hour car, and you can do so at the same price as Bill Gates, is a profoundly equalizing thing. There is one roadblock along the way, however, which is bias in our data. Right? So if there is no bias, or if we can work against inherent biases that exist already in the data that we're using to train AI, I have no doubt that it'll actually be a forcing function to scale well-being, prosperity, and access to information and quality healthcare.
Okay, we have time for one last question. So paint me a picture. It's 2025. What can we expect from AI and healthcare this year, in biotech and genetic engineering this year? What can we expect in 2050? Will we cure all human diseases? Will we solve aging? What is the pie in the sky, and when can we expect, where are you seeing things heading this year and 2050, 2100?
I think this year, I agree with you. I think it's all about creating unbiased data sets for AI to train their models on. Because I think, as I mentioned earlier, AI as a model, it can be garbage in, garbage out. Without a complete unbiased data set, you're going to actually get a biased model, and that's not going to be good. So I think this year, and maybe even in the next few years, Element is going to be dedicated to providing unbiased, large-scale data sets for scientists and researchers to make the really accurate foundation model on to decipher biology. In 2050, I don't think we're able to say, we can predict everything based on the model yet, but I think we will get there. It's step by step. Yeah.
I'll give one literal answer and one analogy. Within the decade, I think Enveda and others in the field will publish the first complete genome, or in other words, what is the complement of chemicals in your body, and what are their levels when you're healthy. And I think that will have as much of an impact, if not greater, than the human genome. The analogy that I'll give you is that 1.7 billion years ago, an archaeal cell swallowed a bacterium. And when it did, that became effectively the mitochondria, increasing the energy per gene 200,000 times and paving the way for all complex life to evolve. And this was a miracle right in the pathway of 2 billion years of completely banal single-cell life. And so I think today where we are is sort of like the mitochondrial moment for humanity. So it'll be very, very hard to predict where we'll go, but it'll be wonderful.
Awesome. Let's end it there. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Viswa. Some food for thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.